Hey everyone! He's playing Nami! Get him! Welcome to another OP07 guide. This time with Dr. Giuliano, the iceberg guy, on specifically Nami for OP07. A lot of times you're going to need to make a lot of friends before you go into playing Nami, but to be honest, we're all playing the game of competitive One Piece. And in that, we all have to know how to play one against Nami, and then I think it is a good time to play Nami, in my opinion. And we learned from the expert, Dr. Giuliano, in his off-meta Discord, essentially, how to play Nami in this capacity. In this video, we go over why to play Nami, the deck lists, any additional options. We don't go too far into like really strange builds. When it comes to this video and including the Patreon full video, there's a lot of little tips sprinkled in because I just have questions and they come up, and honestly, Nami is just filled with a whole lot of little tips in order to help win a game. We go over the mulligan, if you want to go first or second, the early, mid, and late game stages of when your deck gets down low, when to take life, when you should consider what cards to discard in certain matchups, and finally all the very unique matchups, including the mirror and all the other exponential matchups you're going to be facing. This video is actually kind of a promotion for my Patreon. On my Patreon, I do have all of this guide where it's a full hour and 10 minutes, where this one's just half an hour, which is still a respectable amount. I also have all my other guides for every single deck under my Patreon as well, and it's under the One Piece Pro tier of a $15 monthly sub. But you'll also be shown here on all my videos going forward. I am thinking about doing some shakeups to the bigger tiers and having a little bit more value from those bigger tiers soon. Join the Discord to have an idea of what's going on there, and additionally, I want to just say thank you to all my patrons for making this video possible. Without further ado, let's get into the goo. It's a great day here at Kekfilet's Patreon, YouTube, Amazon Prime plus Paramount extravaganza. I have with me today Dr. Giuliano, or Giuliano Iceberg Guy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. I learned a lot of the game, first TCG by watching Keck's videos earlier on. So, it's an honor to be here.
Awesome. That's great. With those early on videos, what videos specifically, like the Doflamingo stuff, or is that, I guess it's the only videos I had early on.
Yeah, the Doflamingos, and also I was a big fan of the Keck Pass, because like that was a good way to get insight into how like really good players like train and these little things. And like this is my first TCG ever, so like even just like watching your videos and hearing you like explain like these very basic things of like I like to attack for 7 because that's an efficient number, stuff like that was like really helpful when I first started.
Great. Well, I'm glad you're here with me today. Where it's come full circle. We have to come back to you, the viewer, to learn how to master. Honestly, this deck, you probably want to have a lot of friends before playing this deck, right? In general, Nami, because a lot of people may stop trying to play games with you generally because it's not efficient practice for them. But it's obviously we're talking to you today because it is a very good deck in today's meta. And it's to the point where people aren't playing this because it's kind of boring because it's that strong. And
Yes.
yeah, I wanted to introduce you a little bit first and why we're even talking to you first about this. I know you're kind of known as the Iceberg Guide, and you have like a Discord separate to play a bunch of random decks and such, but you did top at Nationals playing Nami, is that right?
Yes, and I have it right here. I also won my serial card, my first time ever bringing Nami to a regional. So, like 2 good accomplishments.
Yeah, but huge accomplishments to be honest, and not doing it as Nami is honestly pretty good. And the main thing is, I would say there is like a kind of a subsection of a community for Nami, and on top of that, a subsection for the community that just hates Nami playing against it.
Oh yeah, no, the people that hate Nami is a lot bigger than the community of people that love Nami.
Mm-hmm.
One of the benefits though of playing Nami is that a lot of people just like auto quit on Sim and refuse to learn how to play against it. So you will just get a lot of free wins because people just absolutely refuse to even learn the basics of
Yeah.
the matchup.
Yeah, exactly. People kind of need to learn what they need to do, but on top of that, I mean, we're here to learn so you guys can bring it to your regionals, locals, things like that, and maybe rack up some wins and try to find a fun in the deck. But with that, let's actually jump into why. Why should people be looking to play Nami, and why are you wanting to play Nami this set?
Yeah, so right now, set 7 is the perfect storm for Nami. And even when you look at early results, like Nami won one of the first waves of US Store regionals, and it's consistently been topping, getting like multiple top 16s, even sometimes in Europe and Oceania. And this level of consistency with Nami has never happened before. So
Mm,
first off, Nami got tremendous new support this set that makes the deck the most consistent it's ever been, and
mm,
also giving you a lot more proactive draw options than you used to have.
mm.
The new support engine that's great is of all things like the Amazon Lily Kuja Pirates package
Yeah.
that is god awful in Boa. It's perfect for Nami. And then on top of that, this is probably like one of, if not the slowest metas the game has ever had, and Nami thrives in a slow meta. Just naturally, the longer the game goes on, the more time you're going to have to naturally draw and mill through your deck. So Nami really punishes like top decks, especially like Enel. Enel's
Mm.
almost a free win. So if you hate playing against yellow, like play Nami.
Yeah. I mean, this deck essentially puts a clock on your opponent every single time, right?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
clock is really slow right now. There were fast metas where Nami was actually just barely eking out that, but if it got any like one turn slower, then it's gross, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of the people that are playing Nami now because when I started playing Nami, it was like set 4 super aggro, and I was just facing down Zoro, Newgates, and Laws all day, beating me down.
Mm.
So so much easier playing this deck right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna see a couple of those. I know we're gonna go into a lot of the matchups specifically that we're gonna be facing now and how to navigate those later in the video. But great. Well, with that, playing Nami, I first wanted to introduce Nami a little bit and reading reading her card. If you guys haven't realized, she has an additional rule. You're gonna win by this about 99% of the time. Is
Yeah.
additional rule when your deck reaches 0 cards, you win the match instead of losing it. And she does have another effect when your opponent takes a damage through the attack of this leader. You can trash 1 card from the top of your deck. I'm sure that's almost not relative ever, but
Yeah, so with that, first of all, I don't recommend doing that most of the time because one of the added benefits of playing Nami is that in most decks, like those 4 or 5 cards your opponent has in life are just dead cards that they will
mm,
never see for the rest of the game. So the benefit of crashing a card from your deck is is not worth the risk of like potentially your opponent seeing that 1 card they needed to see the out.
mm,
The only time this leader effect really comes into play is if it's like the very last turn, you have 5 cards in deck and you can only get through 4 cards. Sometimes you do need that last leader swing. So if your opponent has like 5K bodies on the board, it's good throughout the game just to do like, 5K, no more. Like don't attach Don to Nami and like swing into characters. That can really screw you over on your
mm.
opponent's next turn. But if your opponent has a 5K character, just like keep doing chip shots into it, counter out of their hand in case that situation does arise.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure, there are a lot of other fun decks of Nami. We're going to kind of go over the meta build where basically you're playing a lot of counter cards. But if you want to play
Yes.
those fun decks where you're playing like Rush, Usopp, such etc., this isn't the guide for you. But definitely experiment with those if that's fun for you guys. um,
Yeah.
uh, with that, let's actually just jump into the deck list in general. I know people will probably change about 10 or so cards in here, depending on any given sort of preference, right? But
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to go over kind of the new cards that are included, and that's the Kuja Pirate package, right? Why are we wanting to even include this to begin with?
Yeah, so the Kuja Pirates package, there are cards that give you more proactive draw, like Marguerite, incredible card, a blocker that draws you a card on play.
Mhm.
Drawing a card is always great in Nami, and then being able to kind of like give you more breathing room for late game swings. Marguerite's awesome. Like this is the first time playing Nami I have ever been able to survive 2 turns of a 9 cost Zoro swinging. So Marguerite is great. And then next up we have this was always one of my favorite cards. Love Mellow. Like it's a classic card, but it's now searchable off the new searcher. We have the Lip Lady, Gloriosa. So Gloriosa gives you, lets you search some really good targets as well as kind of getting that classic staple Love Mellow now. And then another new fantastic event is Snake Pants. This gives you 4K counter, and then you get to return one of your characters to the owner's hand. So really good to recur your Kaya in particular. Because she'll definitely come up later, but Kaya is always the MVP of the deck. And then next up, the last of the new Kuja Pirates cards is going to be 3 copies of Perfume Femur. It's a card that you can never use this because it's specifically to be played with 7 Warlords cards, but it does have a draw trigger on it, and maximizing trigger RNG always great with Nami. Plus, it's a searchable target off of Gloriosa. So, like the thing with searching in Nami is that, searching with Nami fulfills multiple purposes. I mean, first off, ideally, you're finding a card to help you advance your game state. But with every successful search, that is 1 less card in deck.
Yeah.
And so like over the course of 4 or 5 searches, good. But the most important thing about searching with Nami is that the order you put the cards at the bottom of your deck really does matter, because if you are getting to 0 cards in deck to win, you are going to see those last 4 cards. So ideally, when you're playing the searchers, you want to put your proactive draw cards up front, and then you want to sequence your events on the bottom in a way that if you drew into them, it would cascade to getting into 0 cards. So like, for instance, Love Mellow draws you a card on counter if you have 4 less cards in hand. There's another card, Gavel, which trashes 2 cards from the top of your deck. So if you saw those 2 cards, you would want to put Love Mellow as the 4th card. So you draw into Gavel on the 3rd card, which then trashes the last 2 cards.
Exactly. So, I think one big tip, and maybe you could tell me this, I think people need to really learn how to sequence the top of their deck, especially with Spada.
Yes.
And specifically when they stack the top of it, to stack the cards that are really useless, because when you trash cards from the top of your deck, you don't want to trash Kayas, you want to trash Femurs.
No.
So
yeah, so there are two counter events in the deck that instead of drawing trash you, those are Rubber Band of Doom and Gum Giant Gavel. So Spada is a perfect combination piece with those two. Even in some circumstances, if my opponent was to swing at me for 8,000, that's a bad number to swing at Nami with, but let's assume they swing at me for 8. I may actually counter for 7 with Spada, so I know what cards I am trashing or keeping, and then over counter to 11 with the Gavel. Because there's nothing worse than like blindly doing Gavel and then trashing like a Kaya and a Love Mellow. It feels terrible.
Okay. Got it. Understood. To kind of finish off the deck a little bit, I know that we have this one Deathwink. I think this is a pretty good card when you go to like 0 cards in hand. It's just kind of like a filler card because it's kind of a hard, kind of in a weird spot right now. Or,
yeah. So I actually I want to give a shout out to 2 fantastic Nami players. Chandler, the only other person in the U.S. to top Nats, and Brampton, the EU GOAT. They were really like, it's a small community of Nami players that is top Nats, so there's a strong brotherhood there. And we've been kind of like crafting this deck together. And the one Deathwink actually does feel great. The reason for it is you will run not as much with the Kuja package, more so with the older package, but you will run to a point where you just feel like you're running out of steam. And just seeing that one Deathwink is usually enough to, get you that extra draw if you can resolve it as the last card in your hand. There also is, I was kind of skeptical when I first heard this, but there's a psychological component to just like running one Deathwink. If your opponent sees a Deathwink in the trash, they will spend the rest of the game awkwardly playing around it.
Yeah.
When I played the other day at locals, I had the Deathwink in trash, and my buddy was going through my trash, and he's like, "Where are all the other Deathwinks? They have to be in hand." But jokes on them. There's only one Deathwink.
Yeah. Okay. I love that psychological aspect of it, and I think that's important to be flexible. Don't show everybody your list, but maybe be flexible with your list, guys out there. Specifically on a piece, and I was I think a lot of people They feel like this card's kind of a waste, but I realize why this card is so good in a lot of ways. It's because sometimes you literally just have dead cards, and you'd rather ditch dead card just to get a one random. Well, East blue cards are the best cards in this deck, right?
Yes.
So,
Oh, without a doubt. That's why they had to do that to kind of like balance her out because otherwise it would be broken. And Apis can also search herself, so she's more consistent.
oh, that's so good. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And with this build of Nami, we are running two cards that are intentionally bricks in hand that are there for the trigger. I already talked about the Perfume Femur, and
Yeah.
then next up is Impel Down All Stars. That's another card. It actually does have niche applications where you can
Hmm.
play it to trash two cards from your hand if you wanted to winnow your hand size down to get like a Mellow or Deathlink live.
Yeah.
But now that we're running two dead events in hand, it makes the Apis like so much more consistent. So that's one
Hmm.
of the new benefits of the Amazon Lily Kuja Pirates package working synergistically with Apis. Before
Yeah.
this, Apis was a tech choice. Like topping lists didn't even run it, but now Apis is a central engine of the deck.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's gonna help you in those end game scenarios where you actually just need the last Kaya, but you have too
Yep.
many dead cards.
Yep.
The last card I want
Yep.
to talk about before we talk about optional cards is actually going to be Whitesnake. I feel like this
Yes.
came in OP06, and I mean there wasn't like a whole lot of Nami guides at the time. It feels like it was just a new card, but it's very relative now because of the amount of wideness that happens with red purple law. What do you think about Whitesnake in general? Like early, late game? I mean, it feels like it's kind of a semi MVP lately.
Yeah. Yeah. Whitesnake is the single best card to be introduced to the Nami card pool since release. As you mentioned, like Nami used to really suffer into wide decks, and so Whitesnake is it's fantastic because if your opponent has 5 attacks on board and 1 leader swing, that's
Mm-hmm.
6k diffuse counter power for 2 Dawn. So usually the later in the game you play Whitesnake, the better because you're getting more benefit from it. Whitesnake is also it's a fantastic 2 Dawn play as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, if your opponent's going first, like say you're going against a Lucci and they play a Spandam on one, they don't have like another body to play that turn. So sometimes they do 5 on leader, 5 with Spandam. So that can negate 2 swings and also give you an upfront draw to start, hopefully getting some good draw momentum.
Yeah, I really like that. I one thing I really like, I mean, about White Snake in general too, is that it actually forces your opponent to now think if they need to swing 6 always. Because now your opponents will
Yes,
always
yes,
swing 6. If they swing 7, you can actually just White Snake and then use like Rubber Band of Doom. And then from now
yep,
on, any 7 swings, which is very common, now just have to turn into either they have to either go back down to 6 or go up to 8K, right? Which usually
yes.
they'll do more the 8K than anything. So
Yeah, so the worst thing for Nami was when you used to get like a bunch of 9k swings coming at you.
mhm.
And so just boosting it to now, there's a major difference between getting multiple 9k and 10k swings at leader
Mhm.
every turn.
Yeah. It definitely makes it. Again, you said the later the game goes, the better this is. Using it twice in one turn maybe doesn't get as much value, but I guess if it's gonna win, you're gonna win the game anyway with it. But
Yeah, I typically like to stagger out the white snakes as much as I can.
yeah.
So ideally, like you have one in hand and then you draw into another one, and then you get like 4 white snakes off in a game. That's kind of the way to get the maximum value. So yeah,
Okay, got it. And then kind of a last card. We talked about Snake Dance earlier. Putting the cards to your hand. We're just gonna be putting any card we can at a time, right? That makes sense because you can reuse searchers. Kayas are obviously really good, but
yeah, yeah.
one
Is
thing
the
I almost fell into this trap. Don't just play Kaya as soon as you have it, unless you have cards that are bad in your hand, at least one to trash, right?
yes, yes,
Because if you're
yeah.
trashing good
So
cards, it
actually,
sucks. So yeah.
yeah. So with Nami, you do actually, even though like the point is to turbo mill your deck, you do have to be patient. So Kaya, and then the other card, Sanji's Pilaf, which is another proactive draw card. Sometimes you do want to be patient with them. Like if your opening hand has like Kaya and 4 other fantastic cards in hand, you may want to wait. Sanji's Pilaf, you may want to hold off until like mid game time so you don't like leave up enough Dawn for, or sorry, you don't tap enough Dawn for your opponent to just get like swings at you that you probably could have avoided. So the more you play Nami, the better you'll get with the rhythm of when to play certain cards and under which conditions.
Yeah, got it. Exactly. I mean, I think one thing people fall into is actually making a mistake is using Sanji's Pilaf way too early. Because
Yes,
if
yes.
you have no Dawn up, you'll realize, guys, if someone ever just swings even 5 at you with no Dawn up, it feels terrible. Like, it's actually,
Yeah,
you gotta just take the damage because you don't want to discard these cards for counter. These aren't counter cards. These are more like events you can use that have a body on them. So,
yeah, yeah. Back in set 4, when I got my serial, like I did a interview on my buddy's YouTube channel, and at the time I actually said Sanji's Pilaf sucks. It's one of the worst cards in the deck because of how aggressive it was. You like never wanted to actually hard play it. But now that we're in a slower meta, this is a card that you do want to, again,
yeah.
use reasonably, but you definitely want to be playing a lot more consistently.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay. Great. Optional cards. Let's go into optional cards. Is there anything I can like bring up here that you think might be a good idea for the deck specifically?
Yeah, so first off, it wouldn't be a complete Nami guide without just mentioning that there are two other engines that you can
Mhm.
run. One is the buggy engine. That was basically like the Nami list before this set. Like, if you want to learn more about that, just watch any like Nami interview with anybody that topped that. They'll be running the buggy build. And then there is a new engine as well that's had some fringe success in the East. The Seven Warlords package based around the Sengoku Searcher.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so just to know, like there's more options, but this list is the way to go. The buggy build is a lot more defensive. So if the meta does speed up and get more aggressive, maybe you want to play around with that.
Okay.
The Sengoku build, I don't like it. I think you have a quote about like don't like half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, the Sengoku build feels like it's half-assing the defensive buggy and half-assing the proactivity of the Kuja package.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are two other builds
Uh-huh.
that you can look up content on beyond the scope of this video. But first, there's been a couple staples from Nami that have been cut that may have some room. First off is Brickfist. Brickfist lets you bounce a character, so either your or your opponent's character to hand.
Mhm.
Whitesnake just does it so much better because you get the counter as well, and then you get to bounce the Kaya. Brickfist could be kind of weird because like if you play the Kaya and then Brickfist, you used up 3 Dawn, which could leave you vulnerable. But now Whitesnake does it all. Whitesnake also has a sorry, not Whitesnake. There's
It's
too many
okay.
snakes.
This is Snake
Snake, yeah,
Dance. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, Snake Dance, Snake Dance. Snake Dance does it all, and Snake Dance also has a such a bad trigger, being able to recur one of your characters while bouncing an opponent's character. The
Return.
only matchup that like
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah,
What? It does
Snake Dance.
both. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, the snake dance trigger is insane.
Yeah.
It does both. Yeah, the snake dance you're never sad to see off of trigger.
Okay.
The matchup that I found Brickfist to be essential into is Gecko, and
Okay.
I don't know how much Gecko we're seeing nowadays.
Mhm.
Because Gecko played mostly 4 cost bodies and was able to get a really wide board very quickly. And so I found in that matchup, kind of like staggering out your Brickfists was the way to win. But if you're yeah, I don't think the benefit of teching in Brickfist for
Yeah.
the potential Gecko matchup is worth messing
I
with the
mean,
consistency.
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I do think it seems like it's a good card for like a mirror, right, as well.
Yeah,
But that's I guess there's probably actually there might be more Namis than Geckos going forward, but
actually,
maybe
yeah.
yeah. So
We can talk about the mirror later. That used to be a really fun match, but now it's absolutely miserable.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah,
all mirrors go. But okay, yeah.
yeah.
What is there any other cards we can think of?
Oh yeah, the other one that immediately comes to mind is Zeph.
Okay.
Zeph used to be like the boss monster of the deck, or like the closest thing Nami had to a boss monster. Where
Mhm.
if you get a hit on your opponent's life with a Dawn attached, you get to trash the top 7 cards of your deck, which is a lot. The reason why Zeph is completely cut from this build is Zeph was almost exclusively played for the Katakuri matchup because Nami puts the opponent on a timer, but 10-drop Mom puts you on an even shorter timer. So you had to be very aggressive with your Fs against Katakuri. And if you played that way, it was an insanely easy match. But now with Katakuri almost falling off of the meta, there's no reason to really play Zeph.
Okay. Got it. Okay, but in case that ever did come up to light, maybe Zephs and such will come to light. Obviously, we're not looking at cards like Usopp or Soja King, which seems like Soja King was basically made for this deck, but it actually was just ended up being not useful, right? And
Yeah,
a lot of
it was
things.
really good into the Whitebeard matchup, and aside from that, it was terrible.
Okay, yeah, it's too expensive. You know, I wouldn't play that in any
Yeah,
build, right? So
no,
in any build of any deck. But okay, great. One. I mean, I don't want to go into like fringe pieces like this. This doesn't really exist for this kind of deck, but
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
there'll be a world. Maybe there's a world, right? But no.
yeah. Every Nami player has their like dream weird tech choice, and then it never actually works out. Like my fringe tech choice is Hanger. I really
Hanger,
want that
yeah.
card to work. Yeah, I really I do think there is a world where you rest the Hanger and then recur it with Snake Dance to like fizzle out the attack when they attack your Hanger. But I don't I it's a meme dream. This
Yeah.
is the most consistent version. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a meme dream, but maybe in the mirror, like those fridge cases, right? So
Yeah, 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 yeah. If you have a bunch of Nami players at locals, like run a hanger.
okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure at your locals you maybe see an extra Nami too. I feel like every good player that like kind of shows up and goes to their locals, eventually people at their locals they like to play what those players are playing too, in my opinion. So I don't know if it's like that with Nami specifically. Maybe that's the only
Yes.
one I would not think of. But every good player I talk to, they're like, "Oh yeah, because I play this now, everyone plays this at my locals."
Yeah,
So
I have a lot of Nami players at my locals, and so like, whenever I run a blue deck, I run 4 copies of Gion, no matter what.
which
Uh,
card?
Gion, it's the one that this isn't for the Nami mirror, but it's just if like I'm playing a blue deck, Gion. It's
Gee.
the 2K. It's a 2K. And the thing is, when your opponent activates an event on your turn, they have to return 1 card from hand to the bottom of their deck. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. When like Reiju used to run this, and if I went against a Reiju, I just like hated myself. It was yeah. The second this card hits the board, Nami loses.
That's so funny. Okay, got it. Some anti-tech choices. I love it. I love it. Okay. One card I think I forgot to mention while we were doing this, and I'll kind of sequence this back in, is actually Daz Bones. I think people kind of
Oh
run him
yeah.
as an issue
Yeah.
of Gavel. I mean, people kind of play two of these, especially when they had like a lot of buggy stuff going on. Is there any thoughts on Daz Bones before we continue on?
Yeah. Yeah. So that Daz Bones lets you recur any 1 cost. The main target is obviously the Gavel. Daz Bones used to be a lot more important in the Impel down buggy build because your win condition was getting off multiple Death Winks as your last card in hand, and Daz Bones would help you get to that last card. The most satisfying Nami combo is when you have 3 cards in hand, Death Wink, Love Mellow, and Gavel, and so you draw a card with Love Mellow, you trash that next card with Gavel, and then you draw 2 with Deathwing. That is 5 cards out of deck for what is it, 14k counter power. That is the most satisfying Nami play.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so it definitely was usable. It might still be usable, but maybe in a different, maybe in a more Deathwink heavy kind of meta, right? So,
Yeah. I was playing around with running like a copy or two of Mr. One, but I found that I didn't need as much like draw and mill on my opponent's turn with this new build as I did with the buggy build.
okay,
Since the buggy build was like much more defensive and counter based, like you really needed to see like recur multiple gavels. Sometimes you play gavel 5 or 6 times in a game, but with this one, between like Apis finding your really good draw cards, Margaret giving you extra draw, and being able to like recur Kayas and search for Pilafs and everything, I find that I don't normally need to get multiple gavels off. In
okay.
fact, during this meta, I find myself like crashing gavels with like Kaya much more often than I used to.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. I mean, it feels like right now we're kind of rewarded too for being with just that middle card in hand. Like Love Beam is actually really really good. It actually almost got buffed.
Yes.
And the fact, I mean, you're gonna have games where you'll have like still 3 life, and you're gonna deck out because of just how powerful this engine is with Love Mellow. So
Yeah. Love Mellow was always my favorite event in Nami, and so I'm so
Mhm.
happy that it's finally searchable.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I've had. I mean, I've only played like a couple games of this so far.
Yeah,
But I've had games where like I've over countered so I can love beam and get the draw off of.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I'll,
yeah. It's kind of like yeah. It's
yeah,
kind of like how back with like Queen, sometimes you would want to over counter. Sometimes with Nami, you also want to over counter.
yeah. Okay, great. Well, now on to one of our favorite parts, the mulligan. And I'll maybe going first or second matters a little bit. And I do think, if you have too many trigger cards in your hand, it's good to mulligan. But what are we looking to mulligan
Yes.
kind of?